Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey y'all, I'm Taryn Finley, host of a new podcast from HuffPost called I Know That's Right. Each week, I'll be taking you on a ride where mainstream media and the depths of internet culture collide. Joined by a rotating cast of friends and guests, we'll be breaking down the weekly what's what and who's who of pop culture. You need a show that separates the mess from the stuff that makes you say, I know that's right? Don't worry, girl, I got you. Check out I Know That's Right, wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. It comes to you in a time that is quite sad, and I've had a real struggle this week, to be honest with you, to get the motivation to write anything for the show. And it's not that I run out of ideas, it's just what's happening in certain parts of the world. For future reference, anyone who listens to this in the future, the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine is quite a sad one. I'm not going to make this podcast political because it's not, I don't want to be that person. It's just making me feel a little bit, I don't know, any of you out there have parents. I have a very elderly father, and he lived through the Second World War, born just before, actually he was, I think, 6 or 7 at the outbreak of war, and so he saw and developed through that period, and I feel for the elderly who have lived through these things, particularly in the Ukraine and in bordering countries. Pardon me. So this one episode, guys, is for them. It's for the people who are struggling. It's for those elderly that will bring horrible memories back. I have to be honest with you, I haven't had the guts, to be honest. Cowardice is the understatement. Talk to Dad about it. I just don't want to. I'm trying not for him to relive things that he doesn't need to relive. These things should be pressed back into the past. Anyway, that aside, this is a music podcast. This week's episode is an interesting one. I have been looking for a tape deck, a good one for some time. I won't buy new tape decks, the new Tashin tape deck mechanisms that proliferate the world. That's not a word. Proliferate the world. Can't say it. Anyway, that are all around the world. Are cheap, basic mechanisms. They're even in the most expensive modern tape decks. These mechanisms are in there. So don't be fooled by buying if you can find an expensive tape deck. So what I did was, I've been hunting around for so long, I finally found someone in my local area that was selling I picked up a Marantz SD1000 5050M tape deck, manufactured in 1979. When they said it was working, I believed them. I knew exactly what the problem would be. It would be the belts. Often the belts in these things, over time, if not being used, the rubber corrodes and becomes like a sticky, viscous mess. I watched a few YouTubes about it. Watched some of my times when I need to just do things that are not something just to take me away from my world. I like to watch DIY audio stuff. One of the ones I really enjoy is a guy called Techmoan. I'd highly recommend him. He's got a good sense of humour and he's really interesting. Anyway, he does things about replacing belts. And the tape deck door would open but not close. So I took the top off, as you do. Beautiful mechanism. And all it was a bit of oil. Pardon me. Sorry, I do apologise. It's not sleeping with this thing I've been talking about earlier in the previous part of the podcast. Anyway, so so the mechanism wouldn't close, and what it was that I looked at the mechanism. I took some time to study how it worked. A bit of oil, and it opens and it closes nicely. But both the driver belt and the rewind and fast forward belt completely gone. Luckily, those two are easy to replace, so I've ordered a couple of pairs of those. I had to pay something like $30 from Portugal, and they're coming, winging their way. But it took me about 3 hours this morning when I took it apart, to clean all of the rubber gunk off, because you have to clean all the rubber gunk off when I use a mixture of isopropyl alcohol and nail varnish remover, and getting well-made mechanisms aren't easy to get to, so it was quite tricky. I had to take the motor off, I had to take the cowling off the spindle and take the back off, and it was really quite messy. I think I need a cup of tea. Probably should have made one. I'll do it in the break. Anyway, so it made me think when I did it about tapes, because I've got a lot of tapes and I really enjoy analog media, as you know. That's why I'm a vinyl, and I collect tapes, and 8 tracks I love as well. If I had an 8-track player, maybe one day. Not necessarily really, because there's not that much of it in the medium. But a lot of bands are now releasing cassettes. It's actually becoming a cheaper alternative for those who want an analog sound to vinyl. I mean, I've just ordered the new limited edition Iron Maiden cassette for Killers. For Number of the Beast. That cost me $50 Australian, which is about £22, all up. Now, it's a lot of money for a cassette, but of course, being a collector, it's going to way to be is. But you can go onto Bandcamp and pick up lots of cassettes for relatively cheap amounts. $8, $9 is pennies, really. Cassettes last year sold 120,000 units in the UK alone. 120,000 units in the UK of a supposedly dead medium. I think most of those things, though, and this is what's going to come. This is why it brings it to metal and to music. It comes to the underground scene. I think a lot of the youngsters are yearning for a past pre-digital, and that's how we lived. That's how people of my generation, older generations, and maybe the one just after me, consumed their music on the go. Oh yes, there were CD Walkmans, but cassette players were really were the heart and soul of music for a long time. Because, again, it's romanticising, but my wife, I've got some tapes in my collection that I made for Karen. We just, when we were first dating, you make like a mixtape. You knew you loved someone when you made a mixtape, because you had to be there with the music, to pause it, to stop it, to change it, to write on the little card, to get it all accurate. It wasn't just a case, here's a CD and off you go, click and collect. So sorry. I really am sorry, guys. I was also up late watching the football last night, and finally West Ham got a win. So that doesn't help my sleeping. And then, of course, I looked at the news and couldn't get back to sleep. So I got up and watched. I got the latest Fish, his live album from one of his latest tours. Was one of his last tours, and it's got a live DVD, and it's got like he plays most of Clutching at Straws, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He gets to play Tuxon. That's Tuxon, Tuxon, which is one of my favourite million songs of all time. One of my favourite guitar solos. Play that live, and I've never seen them play it live, so it was quite good to see that, like really thrilling. But tapes, so 120,000 units in the UK, 220,000 units in the US. I can't speak for other markets. I didn't really research it that well, to be frank. Whereas vinyl went up 30% last year, and cassettes went up, I think it was 60%. So it's back there. So cassettes, people say, oh, but they used to unspool, and the sound, you'd get a thing called woe and flutter, where the tape deck, if it wasn't a good mechanism, would speed up and slow down, and you get some interesting effects. Now that's going to happen with old tape decks. It will probably happen with the one that I've just bought. There are ways of fixing that. Little pots on the circuit board where you can adjust the power to get different pitch. I'm not going to do that. I think it's probably just needs new belts. But they were compact. Good reason. They came out in 1962, and invented in Sweden. And he only just died. The inventor only died last year. In fact, it was actually by Philips. Philips, interesting company. They also pioneered VHS, but didn't. That's video cassettes for you young people. It's video cassettes. The big black thing you put in the box in the machine to make it play, that had dropouts, and you could pirate things. And anyway, the beauty of analog. But he died only, and they didn't copyright it well, and so the Japanese companies came in and just took control. Same with VHS, why Betamax, even though it's it was a better formula on a Omega system, which is like a figure of 8 onto the tape head, whereas VHS had to go for all these different paths. If you ever see an open machine VHS machine, it goes all different ways and stretches the tape. It's a more not a functioning, really good functioning machine. Beta was better for picture as well. But anyway, so they didn't copyright it, so the world took over. So there are hundreds of micro and cassette formulas that just died. But compact cassette was the way to go. You could slip one in your pocket, you could put a couple in your bag. And the Walkman came out, and I had a Walkman. One of the first times I ever heard Iron Maiden, I walked into Our Price Records in Brent Cross Shopping Centre in North London. I bought a number of The Beast, I think it was, on cassette. That's it. No, it wasn't. Sorry, Power Slave. And I played that on my little Sony, my brother's Sony Walkman, because they were very, very expensive. I couldn't have one. It was brilliant. It was over-engineered. It had individual volumes left and right. It had record volumes. It had auto reverse. It was for the time, it was a big chunky machine, and you had those little overhead earphones like Diddy Boppers with orange foam, which sound would leak out all over the place, but it didn't matter. I remember wearing that one, walking back from a pub one night, fucking drunk as a skunk. Sorry about my swearing, really drunk. And I got back, it was probably about a 5-mile walk. How I got back, I remember wearing that and listening to Peace of Mind, and on the other side of the cassette, because I'd bought, because you got them in different lengths, guys. Those that don't know, you got C30, C60, C90. So it all depends on the speed. On 120s, 120s were not that good because they used to snap easily, but it was to do with the length of the tape, 60-minute, 90-minute, 120. And I had a 120, and on one side I had Number of the Beast, I think with some other stuff, and on the other side I had Peace of Mind with some other stuff, and I always try to keep one album on one side because I didn't want to turn over and get mixed up. But I do remember listening to that and somehow making home. I just remember, all I remember is the sunlight, the moonlight, the street lights, and Iron Maiden, and the dizziness of being very drunk. Anyway, that was the beauty of cassettes. So you could do so much with them. But why are cassettes important to the metal world and to music in general, the underground? We'll find out once I go and get a cup of tea, lubricate these vocal cords, and we'll chat about the importance of them on the B-side. So as ever, enjoy these messages from from the capitalist in me, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye guys.
When you're ready to pop the question, the last thing you want to do is second-guess the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can design a one-of-a-kind ring with the ease and convenience of shopping online. Choose your diamond and setting. When you find the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code LISTEN to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code LISTEN at BlueNile.com for $50 off your purchase. BlueNile.com, code LISTEN.
Welcome back, guys. This one, as I said at the beginning, sorry, I had a bit of a tough week, and I think as a lot of people have, and so this is quite sort of off the cuff. I did make notes. I've got notes around, but I'm more just going to just go with the flow. I hope you enjoy it, and I've really enjoyed recording this stuff. And this is my 37th episode now, I think. Numbers are a bit quiet around the world, and that's expected. Anyway, enough of my introspection before. I thought I was introspective, but then I took some laxative and I'm okay now, as my dad would say. Anyway, so tape decks, tapes and tapes. So the beauty and marvel of tapes, as we said, portable, re-recordable. The machines were cheap to manufacture. Yes, you could get really expensive different types of metal oxide tapes and chrome tapes and Dolby noise reduction, and you can, if you wanted to be that kind of person, you could. Now, remember also that some of you people out there, your parents' generation, my generation, and my brother's generation, when you went and bought a stereo, you put a lot of effort into it. They were very expensive. And so you do a lot of thought, and you knew what you wanted from it, and you knew how to use, and you'd read up, and you'd do you just have study on what Dolby did and how to fix this sound signal. And it was very, because from sort of like 1995, I'd say, maybe 95 onwards, micro units were coming in, all compact, all cheap mechanisms. Everything's set up for you. The guys in the labs have set your EQs up. They've set the noise reduction up. All you do is put a cassette in, play it, or record it from your CD. It was basically for people, because it was the 90s and people were time poor and they wanted just a micro cassette to sit in, like I say, micro units, and everything was getting smaller. Long gone with the massive stereos I have. The 4 or 5 huge units with the valves and the warmth and just the, you'd made an investment. This stuff was throwaway. We had one. My wife and I had one when we first came to Australia. We bought a micro unit. It was like a little car stereo. You pushed the tape in and took it into the system in the stereo. Really cool. It was Sony. I've still got the speakers. Very good speakers. But the actual system disappeared. And I didn't have any love for it, and I didn't have any need to want it. Whereas my stereo at the moment, I have a mix of Marantz and Yamaha, and so on. And it's just really, really lovely, and warming and special, and it makes listening to music an occasion. Anyway, cassettes. Why are they important to metal and to music in general? So let's look back before metal. Let's look at the sort of birth of punk. Really is where it took off. So there was a scene, obviously in the UK, the punk scene was very underground, and there were a few magazines that were handmade. The most famous one of them all being Sniffing Glue. It's a fanzine, and they would do articles on the Pistols and the Damned and the Ramones and the Talking Heads, whoever they wanted to do. They did it. You can still get copies of them online. You can now read them all being digitized. If you own first editions in mint condition, you're Might as well sell your house and you could buy a house with one. That's the kind of value these things go for. And they had things in the back where they would have, someone would have a recording of a classic cassette. It was Richard Hell's Television, right? The album was quite hard to get hold of in '78. So someone's got a copy imported. They've managed to find a copy. They would record them. Now, this is the key, guys. This is the key. They would record them onto cassette, but they weren't selling them. They were not selling them. This is the big thing. They were swapping them with if you had to say I had a cassette of the Pistols live at Wormwood Scrubs, for instance, and I looked in that paper and it said, in that back article it said, we'll swap for, I'm looking for Pistols live, and I had that. I would contact them via letter or phone if you had a phone number. Usually it was letter, and you'd correspond a bit, and you'd send your copy of the tape of the Pistols at Wormwood Scrubs to Mr. Bloggs, and Mr. Bloggs would send you his copy of Television, or his copy of Crass's Stations of the Cross, or whatever. Pick your own one, and this thing was quite a unique. It was like pen pals with music, right? And it was to try and grow. I mean, consciously, I think what they were doing was growing in the community of music, and growing the community of this underground scene, but still keeping it very underground. Now, the cassettes you got were usually pretty poor. They may have made 10 copies of the same one. It didn't come with artwork. It was probably just written on a cassette, the name of the band in a padded envelope, or not even those days, just an envelope wrapped in fact, I think my brother said he got one wrapped in toilet paper. It says it all, really. And then, of course, you go to gigs, and there'll be someone there who would have, outside or in amongst your friends, copies of them. And you go, you swap them. Sometimes money would change hands, very rarely, but most of the time it was, swapped. And of course, this went on for some time in the punk community, and in early hip hop as well, of course. I think there was quite a big scene of the swapping scene in New York, with bands like African Bombata and Grandmaster Flash and early Beastie Boys. The Tommy Boy label I was big into that. I liked electro, I still do, and so like the Tommy Boy stuff was really collectible, and there was a lot of that on tape. I mean, I was still a huge fan of Grandmaster Flash, and so I think somewhere in my cassette collection I've got some bootlegs of his, actually, when he was with the Furious Five. Yeah, that takes you back. Anyway, so moving on to the metal scene. So I think everyone is aware that Metallica were big into that. In America, particularly, being a long way away from the European metal scene, particularly from the UK, where let's be honest, was the beating heart of the metal scene was in the UK, back in that sort of 81, 82 era, with bands like Holocaust. Sorry, I know it's the wrong name for this, what's going on in the world at the moment, but Holocaust and Maiden and Quo Vadis and all that, brilliant bands, all the new wave of British heavy metal stuff, which I've mentioned before, Diamond Head and Demon and Venom. I mean, they're classic. They said that that when they got their bootleg copy of Welcome to Hell, it changed them completely, and went from playing just heavy hard rock to this sort of sound. Now, okay, I'm going to do an episode on thrash. It's coming up I've got it registered to do in a couple of weeks' time, but this one here is a good sort of segue into it. So thrash is the way it is in America. The reason it's very much American-centric medium within our metal scene. Yes, it pays homage to Venom and to the new wave, the faster new wave of heavy metal bands like Raven and things like that, and some of the black metal stuff. but really mainly it comes American-centric. It's youth-based music. It's fast-based. It's, the reason, all down-picking and palm muting and as fast as you can go. The glory of, I love good thrash. It's something to behold. I just did a review for Violence latest EP, a Metal Ruse. Please take a look, read that one. I'll put a link in down below. It really does cover what thrash is all about. Anyway, but the thrash scene evolved in through the Bay Area of San Francisco, and because of the tape sharing system. So say Metallica's playing in I'm going to be completely honest. I've not researched this, but I'm just making this up. But people out there, please don't shake your fist at me if I've got this wrong. So they're playing in, I don't know, say New York, all right? And they want to play, but they really want to get their music and play the country. Now, you couldn't just send a DVD, CD, or you post a YouTube video and the band sees it. That's not how it worked. You had to send your tapes around. So you sent your tapes around. You record it, like Maiden did with their Soundhouse tapes, and you send it to all the different venues that you knew played that kind of music, and some that didn't even, right? And those venues would get those tapes, and they would go, "Oh man, Metallica, this band sounds amazing. Let's get them playing in our venue." And you contact like stuff on the tape, but that tape then would get passed on to a load of local radio stations. It would get passed to mates who knew the owners themselves, to family, and they would record that, and they'd re-record that, and they'd re-record it, and they'd send it around. The sound would get worse and worse, and more dropouts, and more crappy audio. But it didn't matter. You didn't listen to those tapes for high fidelity. What you did do is you went, brilliant, I want to see Metallica, I want to see Slayer, I want to see Pantera, I want to see Violence, I want to see Sacred Reich. And I can see them because I've got this tape, and I've just, after my mate gave me this tape, hey, look, they're playing down the road. And so many stories of people getting on coaches and travelling 100 kilometres to the nearest city just to see Violence. Or like I know someone that travelled halfway up England to see Megadeth because they'd got a bootleg tape. This is when I was about 15, I think.
Hi, I'm Danny Pellegrino from the Everything Iconic podcast. And who doesn't love a classic burger from McDonald's? That's right. McDonald's classic burgers are hotter, juicier, and tastier than ever. The patties are cooked to juicy perfection. I love the cheese perfectly melted on top. I love the Big Mac that has a special sauce in every bite. I love the pillowy, soft, golden bun. So in the words of the Hamburglar, which I believe means grab McDonald's best burgers ever before Hamburglar does at a McDonald's near you.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey y'all, I'm Taryn Finley, host of a new podcast from HuffPost called I Know That's Right. Each week, I'll be taking you on a ride where mainstream media and the depths of internet culture collide. Joined by a rotating cast of friends and guests, we'll be breaking down the weekly what's what and who's who of pop culture. You need a show that separates the mess from the stuff that makes you say, I know that's right? Don't worry, girl, I got you. Check out I Know That's Right wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
They got a bootleg tape, and he was my mate's older brother, and he went all the way up to Birmingham because they were in the country. They were, that time, I don't think they were signed, but they were touring, or they were just signed. Anyway, I'm not sure. It was in the very early days. Megadeth fans will know what I'm talking about. And he got his nose broken in the mosh, had to rush to the hospital. It was all chaos. But he dines out on that memory now forever, because cassettes got him there, because he did not know about it until his mate gave him a cassette with that stuff on it. Now, as I said, you could do that same with CDs, and it in theory could be done with CDs, but the difference with CDs is once it's digitized, it's downloadable, it's expandable to the world in seconds. With the cassette, you had to spend time to make it, you had to then pack it up, you had to send it off. It was, again, as I said earlier, I'm reiterating my own voice there, but that's the reason cassettes are important, and I'm really happy they're coming back. I'd love to think that they're doing the same thing for underground music now to my children's generation. Obviously, probably not, but what I don't want it to be is an old man and woman's medium. So it's those older people, the 45 plus year olds like myself, who are just getting nostalgic, because it is a nostalgic medium, but it's also a beautiful one because the sound is better. And if you get a really good tape deck, and like by all intents and purposes, this SD1000 5050M that I've got, this Marantz, made in April 1979, is a warm sound. So even though all tape decks take the sound the same way, they reproduce it differently depending on the circuitry, depending on the transistors. And a little side note, it's the inventor of the transistor, an American, Watson, his last name was. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. There you go. Amazing, isn't it? For discovery of the transistor, to be able to transduce electricity from 110 volts, well, they had, to microvolts. Anyway, that's one dark hole I went into when I was listening to a podcast recently about the history of the transistor radio. Anyway, sometimes you just do these really old man things and you think, oh, no one's going to be interested, but you talk to someone and they're really interested by it, or they put fake interesting on anyway, who knows. But that's me for this week, guys. Do yourself on if you've got a tape deck that actually works somewhere in your house, in your parents' house, your grandparents' house, it isn't very hard to fix. Buy them cheap if you want, but do buy a used one and in good condition. You don't want to give yourself a shock or something. As long as it's in a good condition. These things are genuinely very easy to fix. They are mainly mechanical. In fact, they're 90% mechanical, and if you just watch the mechanism carefully, you can see what's going on. And it will give you joy. It really will. It will give you another reason to play music, another reason to sit down, unless you've got a Walkman, sit down and take half an hour to an hour out of your life and your busy life and relax. I know listening to very heavy metal can't always be relaxing, but for me it is. Anyway, that's me signing off. My heart goes out to the people around the world that are suffering right now, and I hope it's over soon. You guys are going to need rock and roll in your life very, very soon, I'd say. Anyway, that is me. Chat to you next week. I'm sorry I didn't get around to the 10-minute maiden thing. The world just got on top of me. I will do it. I think I'm probably going to do it sometime soon, but it was just all the news, and I couldn't bring myself to sit in front of a mic. I think you guys will understand. I'm going to now get another cup of tea because that's gone a bit cold. And look, please do, please do, if you go onto Spotify or Apple iTunes, give me a rating, because the algorithm, that new podcast listeners find me when people do that, and I've only got one so far, and I've been doing this for like 6 months. I'd love you just to go up there. It takes seconds to go into the top, and just give me 1 to 5. I don't mind if you give me 1, don't care. All interaction is interaction. Obviously 5 would be wonderful, and a written review would be lovely, and I'd love to know some feedback. Do come back, do email me at heavymetaltones@gmail.com. That's heavymetaltones@gmail.com. And if you want to sponsor the show, jump over to buy me a coffee. I'll put a link in the description below. Anyway, that's me for today. I'm going now to put some very loud music on and do some housework. That's me, man. Rock and roll, baby. Anyway, talk to you soon, guys. Bye.